It's Thursday, the 29th of July, 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. In today's headlines, inflation rears its ugly head as petrol and childcare costs trigger a surge in prices, but interest rates still won't rise for some time yet. Plus, the New South Wales lockdown extends, though construction workers and tradies get a carve-out. Rio Tinto announces a bonanza profit, and Spark Infrastructure receives a $5.2 billion bid. Our lead story today, inflation has been pretty much in control for more than a decade, but during the 12 months to the end of June, prices jumped nearly 4%, the highest rate since 2008. Prices jumped 0.8% during the June quarter, taking the annual inflation rate to 3.8%. The increase in the headline rate reflects the unwinding of free childcare 12 months ago and much higher fuel costs on the back of rising oil prices. But the impact of COVID was seen elsewhere. Vegetable and fruit prices were higher, in part due to bad weather, but also because fewer pickers are available. Medical and hospital services were more expensive, as were insurance premiums. The underlying measure of inflation is more important than the headline rate because it strips out the impact of volatile price movement. The news on that front was much better. The annual underlying rate during the June quarter was 1.6%. The inflation figures at first glance are worrying, but they'll be transitory, and the underlying number is low. The inflation figures, along with the Sydney lockdown, suggest that forecasters who believe interest rates won't rise before 2024, such as the Reserve Bank, might be on the right track. In overseas news, US President Joe Biden is close to striking a deal with Congress on his $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which would deliver extra spending for roads, bridges, waterways, and broadband networks. If successful, it should provide a boost to the share market and economic growth. It was a big 24 hours for US earnings. Alphabet, parent of Google, recorded quarterly revenue of $51 billion, well above expectations, sending its share price higher. Apple said better than expected iPhone sales pushed revenues to $81 billion during the quarter. Ironically, given the state of relations between Washington and Beijing, the biggest jump came from Chinese sales. And Microsoft said fourth quarter sales were up $46 billion. So, for the 3 months, Google, Microsoft and Apple combined sold about 240 billion Aussie worth of goods. And NBC has paid hundreds of millions of dollars to broadcast the Summer Olympics in the United States. It's the main reason the swimming finals are held in the morning in Tokyo, because that's prime time in the US. But for the first 3 nights of competition, viewership was down 30% compared to Rio back in 2016. Locally, the Commonwealth Government has revamped its support package for Sydney businesses and individuals, as the state government extended stay-at-home orders for another 4 weeks for the Greater Sydney region. Eligible businesses will be able to claim up to $100,000 in weekly payments. Individuals will be able to access $750, up from the current level of $600. Prime Minister Scott Morrison also outlined a path to normality of sorts, saying every Australian would have the opportunity to be vaccinated by the end of the year, and lockdowns will be a thing of the past. Under the extended Sydney lockdown, people are restricted to their local government area and within 10 kilometres from home. Construction will reopen for non-occupied sites, and a singles bubble will be introduced, allowing someone to nominate a friend who can come and visit. Rio Tinto will return $9.1 billion to shareholders after the best 6 months in the miner's history. The group reported underlying earnings of $12.2 billion for the first 6 months of the year, and 2021 is likely to be its best year ever. Shareholders will receive a total of $5.61 a share, twice as much as the previous biggest payout back in 2019. Everyone expected a big dividend, but this was enormous. Another day, another bid for a local company. A consortium involving the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan Board and private equity group KKR has upped its bid for Spark Infrastructure by 8%, or a 26% premium to its closing price on July 3. The board of Spark has opened the doors to due diligence, happy to consider the $5.2 billion offer, and that was enough to trigger a more than 5% jump in the group's share price yesterday. Westpac expects house prices to rise 18% across the country this year, including 22% in Sydney. And the country's second largest home lender tips that next year prices will rise another 5%. The bank was slightly less optimistic than National Australia Bank, which released its forecasts earlier in the week. And as far as the Olympics go, 3 golds in one day for Australia was pretty impressive. The men's and women's quad sculls teams won, and Ariane Titmus was first in the 200-metre freestyle. The withdrawal for mental health reasons of America's Simone Biles, arguably the greatest ever women's gymnast, from events has been handled really well across the board. Society has come a long way. But my favourite moment from yesterday was the Fijian Sevens rugby team, winning gold for the second time. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning. And if you'd like more detail and more stories, search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. We also release a daily interview. Today we're looking at the global momentum building behind electric cars. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.